to the Snap UK podcast, your one-stop shop for news, views and opinions on this side of the pond. Tonight with me at Chateau Green, I have Jim, say hi.
Hi.
And John, say hi.
Hi.
And notable by their absences, Paul and Gary, who most likely couldn't be asked due to the amount of homework required for tonight's shows. We do have the podcast dog, tip-tapping across the wooden floor, always good on a podcast recording. Today we are recording two podcasts, one AFC Preview and one NFC Preview, to make sure that we fit in as much detail as possible about each division. We're going to try and work our way through in a timely but concise fashion and sort of try and pick out where we think each team's strengths and weaknesses lie.
When has this podcast ever been concise?
It hasn't, but I'm trying desperately. I'm limiting you to 15 minutes per division.
You're fine.
Yeah, we're doing our best. So, I don't feel the need for any further ado. The Superbowl quest starts here. So let's dive straight in with the AFC East.
Ooh, that's me.
Yeah, I've assigned different people different parts of homework. So, John, you're up, AFC East, but I know Jim's going to dive in because he gets too excited about writing these things. So, this is what I think. I think I wrote down the Bills. Too good to be beaten in the AFC East this season. What do you think?
My summary is looking to build on a highly impressive year, get the feeling only Belichick at full powers or COVID can stop this team reaching the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So, with regards to the Bills, Josh Allen, easily the best quarterback in this division.
Yes.
And comfortably a top 6 quarterback at the moment.
Yep.
I think that's fair all round. We'd all agree. His progression over the first 3 years has been phenomenal.
Stellar.
Right. This is where they have the biggest jump for me, because I think New England's defence is going to be so close to what the Bills are putting out this year. But the quarterback position is going to be at least one step behind. I haven't seen anything out of Cam in the first preseason game or anything out of training camp that tells me he's any different to last year, which is he's going to be good in flashes and then he's going to throw 3 balls straight into the dirt because the shoulder just isn't there anymore.
I think you're being pretty generous by saying the quarterback is going to be one step ahead of the Patriots.
It's a bloody great big step.
Yeah, I mean, we said top 6 there for Josh Allen as quarterback. I'd go as far as saying you can consider him in the top 3 behind Brady and Aaron Rodgers. I think if it hadn't been for Aaron Rodgers having an MVP-style season, Josh Allen would easily have won that. So I just thought he was immense. I'd say that,
John, by the way, this is the bit where Jim takes over.
but Josh Allen is consistent. Like Russell Wilson had a great 6 weeks. Josh Allen had a great 18
season.
weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're returning a lot of starters on both the offensive and defensive side, and so that can only be good. And they've kept the coaching team the same, so that's positive. I think it's just going to be a team that goes from strength to strength. There are some weaknesses which John will point out because I don't want to steal his thunder, but overall, I don't think anyone would pit anyone to finish above the Bills in the AFC East.
John. Yeah, I say Stephon Diggs. Has been an absolute game changer for them, and he's like reveling in being the number one. And so basically, there were, when I was one of them, I questioned when he joined the Bills. I was like, I'm sure it's good for everyone, but actually, no, it's been absolutely brilliant for the Bills and for Stephon Diggs.
There was potential there for him to be a troublemaker, right?
Yeah.
That's what we got the feeling when he kicked up at the Vikings, and he hasn't. He's been a team player because he's getting the ball.
They're feeding him, aren't they? And Kirk couldn't.
No, I suspect that's a running theme. But the actual wide receiver group in general, if you look at their top 3 or 4 wide receivers, Stephon Diggs easily number 1.
Yeah.
And then you've got Cole Beasley, love him or loathe him at the moment. He's been brilliant in that number 2, 3 role for years since he was at the Cowboys, and then they've signed Emmanuel Sanders, who is only going to make that position better because he's always been underrated. He had 2 or 3 stellar years at the Broncos, but if you look at all his time around that, where was he before? Like the Saints as well.
Yeah, at the 49ers.
He's always fitted in and been a team player, producing a lot of yards. And then you've got Gabriel Davis as well, who's going to add an extra dimension in there. They've got some speed. They've got plenty of people who can contest catches. I just think the receiving core is brilliant on this team for what Josh Allen wants to do, which is propel the ball down the field.
Yep. Basically, yeah. The negative I had was Cole Beasley personality, because he's very forthright in his opinions at the moment. And I hope that isn't seeping into the other players.
Is this going to be one of the first teams we get to where we say there's a potential for a COVID problem here because of people like Cole Beasley?
I think just because of the amount of coverage that Cole Beasley and a certain quarterback for the Vikings have got on the subject, I think it's going to be between the Bills and the Vikings as to the first team that's negatively affected by COVID.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen was a sort of fellow believer for a while, but I think he's had his vaccinations.
Come to his senses, I think.
I believe the chance of turning down $180 million was possibly the reason why.
I wouldn't be surprised if the new contract and everything else that went with it, and management probably had a quiet word to him and said, "You're the leader of this team. Make sure you're there every week, and to do that, you need to have a vaccine."
Yeah. One more thing I wanted to bring up specifically on the Bills before we move on to the other three teams. Running back is a position they drastically needed to improve, because there will be games where you cannot rely on Josh Allen.
Yeah.
Teams will figure that out to a degree.
That's what I've got. If you can shackle Allen and Diggs, then at the moment you can stop the Bills.
Yeah, so Devin Singletary and Zach Moss had 1,000 yards between them last year, barely, but it's not enough. They've added Matt Breida. Now, I love Matt Breida. I think he's a brilliant player, but injuries are always an issue. What are they going to do? Is this three-headed combination going to be enough? Devin Singletary, for me, is easily the best of the three in terms of pure running back play. But where do they go? Do you focus on one, or is it going to be all three players being fed this season?
I think it'd be more the same, because Devin Singletary is the best of the players they have, but he isn't a star, quite frankly. I would imagine he probably had the most yards. Then it was probably Josh Allen. I can't remember the stats, but it's if you can stop them in the air, the Bills are stoppable. But that's the
not
issue.
Many teams did that.
Not many teams can do it. The defense has been last year was average. It was good to average to good, but I think what they need to do to break through the ceiling where they're at the moment, I think they just need a slight improvement in defence.
With regards to that defence, Matt Milano is key at linebacker for me. I think he only played 10 games last season. He certainly didn't start all of them because of injuries. If they can improve that core and take some of the pressure off of the defensive backs, I think the defence takes a step forward.
Yeah,
that's key for them.
They get Star Lutalele back as well, who was a holdout last year because of COVID. I think that adds to the defensive line. I think it's on paper it's a really strong defense. I think they've probably got the best safety tandem in the league with Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde. So you'd expect the defense to step up again this year. I think last year it wasn't as good as it was the year before.
It was still the best defense in the division.
Yeah, it's still the best in the division. So
I think the only time when it's the playoffs. But yeah, it's getting to the next stage in the playoffs where they'll if they could improve that on last year, then great. I think they can make a Super Bowl run, quite frankly.
Yeah, it feels like the first time they can legitimately make a Super Bowl run since the early 90s, right? Let's hope they have better luck. Right, the three other teams in the AFC East, we need to cover them. I think it's fair to say the Bills get star billing here. See what I did there? Patriots.
It's a star loyalty.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the Patriots, for me, their biggest addition is the return of all of the defensive players who sat out last year for various reasons, mostly COVID related. There were some injuries as well. Belichick clearly fuming. Like I said before, I don't much like what's happening at quarterback. I think you see Mac Jones by week 7 or 8 because I'm not sure Cam's got it in him. He's a running back playing at quarterback. I've said this before. And it worked at the start of last season, and then he got ill and it didn't work anymore. And so we have to move on from that. if the defence is back to being Patriot-style defence, are they a comfortable second in this division, or are the Dolphins right on their tail? Again, see what I did there. Because I think they'll only be separated by one win.
I've got the Dolphins ahead of the Patriots here in my prediction, but
that's because you're an idiot.
But I think it's really close because, you've lost Chung, you've lost Edelman. I mean, Matt Judon's come in, Van Noy's returned because, Patriots don't play well outside of New England. Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry are superb.
We're not mentioning that Hunter Henry's injured already.
It's what happens to Hunter Henry, but when he plays, he's great. As well, Aguilar comes with Aguilar issues.
Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne will surprise everybody this season. They will put up yards as long as Mac Jones is playing.
Yeah.
If Cam is playing, it'll only be the tight ends.
It's but he gives you something you haven't had for a couple of years. He gives you a long threat.
Well, since Brandon Curtis got knocked out in the Super Bowl.
Since he died.
I think you look at this roster, and if you took out Cam Newton and put the name Tom Brady in there, you'd say that the Patriots were finishing top.
Yeah, it's the Super Bowl roster.
It's a good roster. It's lacking quarterback. Yeah, there's some quality issues at wide receiver. That can be covered up with good quarterback play. I agree. I think Kendrick Bourne was at the 49ers last year, and I think he was a great player. I think he could be a good player for you there as well. Brought back Trent Brown on the right tackle, lost Joe Tooney, which I think is a big loss, but you just know that they're going to be coached well. So, and I think that's the biggest difference between the Patriots and every other team probably in the league, is that you could probably give the Patriots 3, maybe 4 extra wins just on the coaching nuance that they've got there.
It often feels that way. I think there is a lot to be said for that, but you do need talent as well. So that's why the quarterback position remains a concern. Speaking of quarterback positions, the Dolphins quarterback, this is why I rated them one step behind the Patriots, but I understand it's much of a muchness in the division. Tua, fully fit now, up to speed, theoretically. Mm-hmm. What we need to know is he elite caliber, Josh Allen, or is he middle of the road? I have said all along, I suspect his ceiling is middle of the pack. He's closer to what we used to call Andy Dalton, who was always middle of the pack, than he is Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson.
He's going to be more Teddy Bridgewater than Aaron Rodgers, but if you've got look at the Super Bowl winners we've had recently. We've had Nick Foles. Carson Wentz got the average quarterbacks can still do all right. I think that the rest of the team. The reason I've got the Dolphins ahead of the Patriots is I think the Patriots may spend a couple of weeks working out the Cam Newton, Mac Jones thing.
Sure.
I think Tua in his second year might just be all right, and as well they've got Brissett if needs be. Who
quaking in our boots? Should Jacoby Brissett come in?
Who, once again, he's a below average quarterback, but he's a above average backup
replacement. Yeah, absolutely. All right then. So that leaves us with the Jets. Now, this is not. I'm going to use the phrase the dog shit Jets of the past.
No.
But I don't understand why everyone is so sure they're going to be that much better. Robert Saleh, first-year head coach. Zach Wilson, first-year quarterback. There's a lot of change, a lot of turnover, which they needed, and they will be better. But this is year one of probably 3 before they're competitive.
Oh, yeah. This is... I'd be positive because Gase has gone. I mean, they can't get much worse. I mean, you're on about the coaching at the New England, the exact opposite. I mean, you look at Adam Gase and you just know that's going to cost us 2 or 3 games this year. I mean, it did. They lost. They lose in the last minute against the Raiders. They
lost a lot of games that they shouldn't have done.
Bizarre decisions they made when they just rushed everyone, and as well. Corey Davis helps the receiving unit, and Jamison Crowder. new players. I mean, Tevin Coleman is at least younger than Frank Gore.
Tevin Coleman, this is a career-defining season. He either comes out this season playing a minimum of 13 games and putting up touchdowns and yards, or I think it's done. Because he's missed time, he's missed opportunity, and he's going to run out of teams to move to. Is that fair?
It's only his third team, isn't it? Falcons, 49ers, Jets. I do take your point.
But he's sat and not played for so much of that time.
I don't think he's a number one star running back. This is another running back by committee.
I gather from camp it's going to be Michael Carter's job to lose.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I'm looking down at this roster, and I think to your point around it's a rebuild, this roster is not a winning roster. This is we're in rebuild. We've got a new quarterback. We've got some new weapons for him. The offensive line is starting to come together. You think about it, where it was 2 years ago with Sam Darnold. It was terrible. They've added some really good pieces there. Mekhi Becton, Elijah Vera-Tucker, even George Fant is a better right tackle than they've had previously. On the defensive side of the ball, there is more work to do. But
they get CJ Mosley back.
They signed Carl Lawson as a defensive end, but I still think they're going to struggle with their pass rush. Now, the biggest benefit they've got is Robert Saleh on that side of things, who got so much out of the 49ers defense when half of them were injured. So maybe they'll be worth more than what they are on paper. But yeah, this team, I think the Jets are finishing fourth, but I do expect to see them better than they were last year.
Yeah, I will sign off the Jets with. I just wanted to say with Zach Wilson, I find it very odd that there's no experienced quarterback behind him.
Yeah,
it's Mike White. Right, there's a reason you've not heard of Mike White. It's because he actually sells cars at the local car lot. The rest of the time, he's not playing, I suspect. Like, that tells me it's Wilson or bust.
Yeah,
and I don't think he's ready. I don't.
I do. That's why I worry. And it seems like they've learnt nothing from Darnold
or Geno Smith or any of the other people that they brought in. Same with Sanchez. They brought him in and it paid off for a while, and then he crumbled. They tend to do this. They don't quite have it set up properly, and. You know, I'm not sold on Zach Wilson yet. The potential is there. But in year one, on this team, with this roster and this backroom staff, he could get crushed.
Oh, yeah.
Could do.
But yeah, CJ Mosley, I've got him down as my key man for them.
Yeah.
In a Salah team.
And I know you put down Zach Wilson as the rookie to watch. I just want to highlight Elijah Moore, who's being a lot of buzz out of training camp. And people are even talking about him being rookie of the year potential. So something to watch out for.
Okay, well, that's the AFC East. Guys, our consensus at the top, I assume, Bills.
Bills.
We've got some consternation over second. What did you go on for second in the division, Jim?
I didn't do it because John was doing it. I would probably go Patriots.
As would I. So we'll take Patriots second, Dolphins third, Jets bottom. But close in the middle of the pack.
Close in the middle of the pack.
Could easily be two teams coming from the middle of this pack.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's what I think. Right, from the east, we sail to the AFC North. And an interesting division to try and pick because it's on its head from where we're all used to it being. I immediately wrote down, this is the Browns' division to lose.
My summary for the Browns was possibly the best roster on paper. Playoffs last year could feasibly challenge the Chiefs for the AFC title.
Oh, I don't know about that, but...
Why not? You look at going through all the rosters, this was one that stood out. And also coming into the draft, they didn't have any big needs. You look across that roster, and there is a good player in pretty much every single position. And in most positions, there's a decent enough backup. They've got a year's experience now being in the playoffs and having that kind of, that experience of kind of the playoff run and getting there and beating the Steelers and going to the Chiefs and unfortunately losing. They've got a year more with Kevin Stefanski as their head coach. There's no reason why this Browns team couldn't be a serious challenger for the AFC title.
Is the reason why because Baker isn't as good as his stats appear to show? If you're looking for a weak link on offense, whilst he's not poor, it's Baker. There's a reason they're reticent to sign him long term.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'd say, out of, if you took between him and Josh Allen, and his classmates in terms of draft years, Baker's not as good as Josh Allen. I think everything around Baker is probably better than what it is at the Bills, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I love the what they've done at running back. Nick Chubb supported by Kareem Hunt with Andy Yanovich, the long-standing Andy Yanovich playing at fullback, which doesn't get enough recognition in the modern game. I think that's brilliant. And then, like I say, the wide receiver group is amazing. It'll be interesting to see what they get out of Beckham this year or whether he gets traded. I still wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved.
I wouldn't be shocked if he gets moved. I put the one negative I could think of was need to manage kind of the ego of Odell Beckham. If that's still there after last year and he still wants to be fed the ball rather than kind of give it to Chubb or to Kareem Hunt, because I think you've got to lean on the running game more so than the passing game because of Baker. If he starts getting antsy in terms of like, I'm not getting the ball passed to me enough, that could be an issue. That's the only negative I can see from this side.
Yeah. I think that's fair. So consensus then that they're topping the AFC North, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. So this is where it gets tricky in the middle. I had the Ravens second and very close to the Browns. I think it could even be split by who wins the matchups between the two of them. The running game for the Ravens is phenomenal. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards and Lamar Jackson.
Yep.
That, for me, is key. I know everybody keeps saying Lamar's got to be able to throw, but we've seen so far, and in the years he's played, that he doesn't actually have to be able to throw until they get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then it becomes an issue because the best teams know how to take away the running game.
I'm not sure how much of it is on Lamar having to be able to throw it. Obviously, he can pass the ball with some degree of accuracy. I do feel that he needs to improve. Like we saw in years 2 and 3, that massive step up that Josh Allen had in terms of passing accuracy. We haven't seen that from Lamar Jackson. And I think that's probably the one reason that Lamar Jackson hasn't been given a new contract. Let's be honest, he was the MVP 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You'd expect him to have a contract straight out of the gate. He hasn't. I think that's why. I do think the wide receiver quality, it has its days. Like you look at the two top ones, Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins. They're good on their day, but there's no consistency.
When are we going to accept that Sammy Watkins wasn't worth the 3rd or 4th overall pick that the Bills paid for him back in
about 3 years ago when he left the Rams, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, he keeps getting jobs. He turned up in the playoffs last year, which, for years Danny Amendola got away with doing, but that's all he did last year.
That's what I mean. He turns up for the odd game, and he must be. I've never owned him in fantasy for this very reason, but he'll suddenly have 2 games where you have 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brilliant. And then you don't hear from him until like 4 weeks later, where he'll have like maybe 50 yards.
Surely it's more about the production they can keep getting out of Mark Andrews at tight end.
Yep.
Yeah, but didn't he had quite a quiet year last year, didn't he? Compared to Lamar's MVP year, I mean, I know last year it all seems strange to Lamar. Last year was a bit of an anomaly, but yeah, he had a bit of a quieter year.
But with regards to what else they've got on the roster, though, he has to play well.
Yeah.
Nick Boyle is a blocking tight end.
Yep.
So you've got to get some more production out of Andrews, which is what makes me think Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator, this is our first mention of the word hot seat. Greg Roman is the first one on it for me in the AFC so far. I don't think anybody in the East that we've just discussed qualifies for that. This guy's first. Harbaugh's got a job for life, I think.
Until he wants to
go.
Leave, yeah.
But the coordinators will be sacrificed if the offensive game doesn't catch up to what other teams are able to do. Yes, the pieces aren't great, but there's enough there that you'd expect some more production out of what they do with Lamar, because it's not like he's without talent. He's just limited.
He's got oodles of talent.
Oodles.
He's got a very specific talent, though.
Yeah.
Well, he's going to hunt you down and kill you. He sounds like Liam Neeson. He's not Liam Neeson.
Yeah.
And this is our first tangent of the week following the Sudetenland deal. Never going to get over that. With regards to the defense, then?
Pass rush is probably the biggest concern I have. I think they got the best 2 cornerbacks in the league.
Yeah.
But they've lost Matt Judon, they've lost Yannick Ngakoue. They haven't signed a good enough backup either through the draft, I don't think, or through free agency. I think they're going to struggle to get to the. It
feels like Calais Campbell or bust.
Yeah.
Which is fine because he's a very good player. But
massive reach.
Those Madden fans.
I wouldn't know what to say. And in the background, the dog is agreeing.
I believe Madden was incredible length. He has incredible length.
From the Ravens, then, I think it gets muddy at the bottom of this division. The Steelers should finish next up. They should, but their O-line has been obliterated. Big Ben, okay, he came back looking a little bit more trim, but I'm telling you, by week 6, he's going to be done because I think the arm is done, the accuracy is done. They don't have a backup in place that is half as good. And we don't know what we're going to get out of the running game. There's been a lot of hype about Najee Harris because he was the best running back available and they took him, but we don't actually know what you're going to get because the O-line isn't good enough to support him.
Well, that's it. They've had some decent running backs. Well, James Conner I still think is a decent running back for the last couple of years.
Average.
But they couldn't get him going at all.
No holes for Conner.
No. So, Najee Harris, even if he's better, if they can't make holes for him, then, he's just going to be more of the same.
This is a coaching team that we always underrate, though.
Yeah.
Like, you look at that season that they didn't have Ben Roethlisberger, and they almost got to the playoffs with really bad quarterback play in Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges.
Who's still in the league, by the way.
Yeah.
He's still around.
And a lot of that is based off their defense, and their defense still looks really good.
It's stellar. It's a top 3 defense.
Yeah, and they get Devin Bush back. They lost Devin Bush halfway through the season, and you saw the drop off.
Nice to see Bush making a comeback.
It always is. You saw the drop off in their stats. So him being back makes a big difference. I do hear. I completely agree with what you're saying about Ben Roethlisberger, and I put him down as a negative. As can Ben be good enough for another year? He's got all the weapons around him that he needs in wide receivers and running back. I think Najee Harris is a better running back than James Conner. He's also a good, better receiving back, which works well in the Pittsburgh system. But yeah, the biggest question mark is on that O-line. They've let a lot of older players go. They've got a lot of younger players, and they need to give Ben more than 2 seconds to get the ball away.
Yeah, I'm going to take a lot to be swayed on this. I love the coaching staff, but I don't think you can offset a massive talent drain that they've had. We should mention the receiving core, though. Chase Claypool, Eric Ebron, Juju Smith-Schuster. If they can get top potential out of them, you keep Ben upright for 2.5 seconds and you get the top potential out of them, then it's really good.
But you're leaving out Deontay Johnson and James Washington as well, and they're 2 underrated receivers. They've got 5-6 good receivers there.
It's what the Steelers do, though, isn't it? They take no names and they make them great.
I tell you, the person I listed as rookie to watch is a 2nd-round pick, Pat Freiermuth, the tight end. Quality blocking tight end, which could add to that, help get more out of the offensive line. Out of Penn State, he was nicknamed Baby Gronk, to give you an idea. So hopefully, if he lives up to...
He was born with a massive thing on his elbow.
If he lives up to 80% of what Gronk is, I think that's a tremendous pickup and another good weapon for Big Ben.
Yeah, okay, that seems fair. And then we're at the bottom, which is where some of us love to be. The Bengals. For me, this is Zach Taylor's last year because they'll be rubbish. Joe Burrow is going to be rushed back. I've been through this before. I have zero faith in anything the Bengals like to do. The team is badly run. I don't hold any ill will against them. In fact, when the Bengals used to be good under Andy Dalton and they went to playoffs 5 years in a row, it was nice to see a storied franchise making a bit of a run. A bit like I wouldn't hold it against the Raiders if they suddenly produced, but we'll get to them shortly.
They won't.
Yeah. But they've not upgraded at running back, where I like Joe Mixon, but he's not been available. They've brought in Jamar Chase because he's best buddies with Joe Burrow. But if Joe Burrow is on his arse because you didn't draft an O-lineman first up, I don't see how that helps you. And I don't know whether the defence is even vaguely viable. I mean, Trey Waynes, okay, he's fine.
Picked up Trey Hendrickson from the Saints, who had a good year at the Saints, but whether that was just it's always a risk, isn't it?
Good year.
1 year, good year. Yeah. Can he replicate that in a team where there isn't as much talent on the defensive side of the ball? I think Jamar Chase will be good. I like the wide receivers they've got in Cincinnati. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins is a good receiver. Tyler Boyd was a good number 3, good number 2 last year, and he could be a good number 3 this year. But your point is around the offensive line. Like they only added Riley Reef, and I think, all right, he's an above average offensive lineman. Is he as good as Penei Sewell they could have picked up or Rashawn Slater? I don't think so. No. So that O line needs to stay fit, and they need to make sure that Joe Burrow is 100% fit as well. I fear they're going to rush him into it, and I fear that it could be a disaster.
You're better off playing Brandon Allen for the first 4 or 5 games, especially if you're going to lose them anyway, and then allow Joe Burrow to work his way back in. But I don't think they'll do that. I think
the only way Zach Taylor keeps his job is if Burrow is fit and this team makes a positive step forward. I think you can look at last year and go, okay, you were unlucky. Joe Burrow got horrendously injured. But actually, in the games he did play, they were playing better. They didn't win many, but they were close.
Yeah,
you don't go 6-25-1 in your first 32 games if you're halfway decent. I don't buy into Zach Taylor at all. I think it's over.
Like I said,
really
it's a make and break year. I could see more on the break. I could see break more than make.
Okay.
I mean, I feel for him because the team isn't set up to win.
No, they
from the top down.
From the top down, yeah.
But Marvin Lewis is still their best coach, and they let him go a long time ago.
I can understand as well, things do get stale. I think Marvin Lewis had got stale. I mean, the fact he's not got another job, I think is a bit of an oversight from the...
when you look at some of the coaches
owners,
that there are in...
Yeah.
Adam Gase.
Exactly. but yeah, the Bengals, I'm afraid, are they're looking at an early draft pick.
Yeah, I think so, which is probably what they need to start rebuilding again, but it's finding the right coach.
They'll just pick a mate of Joe Burrow again.
It does feel
He's their scouting department.
It does feel a little bit that way. Right. From the north, we shoot across the country, and we turn up at a very interesting division, the AFC South, where things are either very, very good or really, really shit. So, whose homework was this?
John.
I put my hand up here.
John.
This is me. So should we start with the Colts?
Well, you can start where you like. That's fine.
Alphabetically, we'll start with the Colts. The squad looks fine, but can they recover from the... They're going to have a rough start. The schedule is hard, and Nelson and Wentz are out injured. So, not a great start.
There's talk that Wentz will be back for week 1, but it's a bit like Joe Burrow's situation we've just discussed. Don't bring him back too early. The guy's made of Weetabix. He will just crumble.
Well, I always think he's stronger than his reputation. But let's not test his reputation, quite frankly.
Well, there's a reason why he's got that reputation.
His injuries he gets are really bad. When he was out for the Super Bowl run, it was an ACL tear. When he was out for the next season, it was a broken back. I think he's currently out with, I think basically he's had this injury since high school, and it keeps turning up. So this is why they've had to take the action. But yeah, don't test it. I'd like to have seen some 4-4 into. We have an injury reputation quarterback. Probably should have something more than Erlinger on the bench, or I can't think who the other guy is.
Jacob
Eason. Fucking hell. So yeah, but Darius Leonard's signed up, which
the defense is amazing.
Your defense is stellar, and for the offense, the return of Marlon Mack is good.
Return of the Mac.
Exactly.
Yeah. That should just be played every opportunity now.
Because they can go committee. Mack's shown he's a good running back. Jonathan Taylor shows promise. Probably wasn't worth all the quite early fantasy draft picks that we kept seeing last year. But yeah, it's just they're a really strong team, and quite frankly, I would be surprised if they're anything other than top in this division.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're wrong. But okay. We'll start with the negatives for me then. T.Y. Hilton wasn't getting it done with a gunslinger for me. He didn't make the best out of what Phillip Rivers was trying to feed him. And I'm not sure that's going to get better with Carson Wentz or whoever plays. I wonder if T.Y. is on the downslide, is what I'm saying.
Oh, he's at the bottom of the slide.
There you go. Jim's with me. So what have they done around the wide receiver group to help this out?
I think, I've said this a lot. You're looking for receivers to really produce in year 2, if you ask me. I think Michael Pittman could be a quality wide receiver. I would not be surprised if he's taken relatively early in fantasy mock drafts because he is going to be the number 1. I do want to see more from Paris Campbell. Like, he had a good reputation at Ohio State. He's not done enough. But this Colts...
He's missed 23 of 32 games with injury. That's the problem.
That's the problem. This Colts team get a lot out of the tight end position with bang average tight ends. Jack Doyle and Mo Alley Cox.
Yeah.
I won't hear a bad word said against Mo Alley Cox.
No.
But like... They get play out of them. They get touchdowns out of them. So, you can see a lot coming from that position. At least one of them, not dominating, but getting a good few catches every week. And yeah, like you said, it's down to the running game. Like Jonathan Taylor and Marlon Mack is as good a 1-2 beast as I think you.
Don't forget Naeem Hines' contribution as well.
He's a gadget, isn't he?
He's been a good gadget player for them.
Gadget player.
He turns up when you least expect. And I think he caught 4 touchdowns last year, which was unexpected. That took away, that poached from the others. But we're not talking fantasy purposes. We're talking real life here. He's a good player.
The distinguishing factor of this team is the offensive line. It's probably one of the best in the league, and I think that, Anthony Costanzo retired, but they've brought in Eric Fisher, who he's not going to be fit for the start, but that's someone decent to bring in at left tackle later on in the season. When you've got an offensive line that's good, you don't need a stellar quarterback and stellar wide receivers because there's time. And cornerbacks can't cover wide receivers for 5, 6, 7, 8 seconds. So there is going to be space. There's going to be space for them to run into it. And you only need an average quarterback like Carson Wentz to find them.
Rock Ya-Sin at cornerback gives away a hell of a lot of penalties. Is he a good player as he comes up for year 3, 4 now? Or is he...
Is he that much? 2?
I think it's 3. But is he a good player, or is he an overdrafted player that isn't quite ready to make it? Because if there is a weakness, it's the back. It's that side of the back end for me that they can be picked on. And I just wondered whether anybody has an opinion on whether or not the cornerback position for them. Xavier Rhodes took time to settle down, and Rock Ya-Sin for me not a quality player. He's just an average cornerback. So they'll get picked on. This could be some high-scoring games.
Could be, but I think you look at the defensive line, and it's got DeForest Buckner, and I really
the pass rush is amazing.
I wouldn't go that far, but Kwity Paye adds something to the pass rush.
I think the pass rush is really good, solid, and I love the linebacking unit. I think it's brilliant. You're not going to run on this team.
I don't rate any of the backfield when you look at it, really. I think they're all...
That's my problem.
There's no one that stands out that goes... Okay, that's a star.
So, so if you know you can't run against them, you're going to throw the ball, and then you're picking on Rock Ya-Sin.
But if you've got, like you say, if the pass rush is good enough, you don't need cornerbacks that are Jalen Ramsey.
Hopefully so.
They don't have to cover for as long.
I'm just looking for a weak link because John said he's comfortable putting them top of this division, and I think that the secondary is the reason I wouldn't put them top of this division.
If Carson Wentz was 100% fit, I would have put them top of this division as well.
Fair enough. I had the Titans top, so... We'll bring them up next, purely because the rushing game is brilliant. Tannehill has outperformed what anybody thought was possible, and they've added Julio Jones. I don't know how you cover the offense. Whether it's good enough, it's the same with the Colts, whether it's good enough to make up for a leaky defense. This was the downfall of the team last year. I'm just not sure. I don't know, but it was a toss-up for me between the Titans and the Colts. I've given it to the Titans because Tannehill is fit.
I've gone with the Colts because I think the Titans' defense is worse. I think you can score quite highly on the Titans, and every so often you can quieten down Derrick Henry. It does happen, he has quiet games. It's ones where Gary bitches like a small girl about it afterwards because.
This is Gary who said Aaron Jones was rubbish.
Exactly, but
hi Gary.
Hi Gary. Hey. But yeah,
every podcast.
I'm having it put on as a sound drop if I can find the clip.
But yeah, I do think I just think on one like he's been indestructible for so long. Derrick Henry.
Are you suggesting an injury is coming?
I'm not suggesting an injury is coming because you could have said that at any point over the last 2.5 years, and he's not. But I do worry for a guy who gets 50 touches a game. It's not that hyperbole, but for that guy who gets so much, like some claims the offense is just Derrick Henry, and it isn't surprised to me that they never really get far in the playoffs because Derrick Henry's knackered. And I think if they want to get further, they might want to think about how they use him during the season, because there is no point of getting to the playoffs and then just going out in week 1, week 2, because your one superstar has been carrying your team for the rest of the season.
I think the addition of Julio Jones I think it will mean there will be less of an emphasis on Derrick Henry, because I think there'll be more emphasis on the passing game. It should free up. As a defense, if you're coming against that offense, are you going to try and take AJ Brown out of the game? Are you going to take Julio Jones out of the game? You don't know. So I think that will help. I completely agree with you. Like, look at the way Henry plays. It's amazing. It's brilliant to watch, but it's oh so physical. Yeah, there's only so much someone can take, no matter how they're built, before something happens in this era of football. You mentioned the cornerbacks for the Colts, the cornerbacks for the Titans, Janoris Jenkins and Christian Fulton.
Janoris Jenkins I like. Fulton,
Janoris Jenkins is a journeyman cornerback.
Yeah.
He's solid, but yeah.
You got Caleb Farley.
A rookie who's coming off quite a serious injury.
Yeah, serious injury. Yeah. That's the problem. I agree. This is why for me it was a toss-up between the two.
I didn't. When I put Colts top, it's not clear. These two make this a really tough choice for number one.
Tannehill has been a big fan of tight ends as well.
Yeah, and they've lost Jonnu Smith.
Anthony Fersker played well, but he's not Jonnu Smith. And do you know who else has joined? It's one of Paul's favourite.
3 touchdown Jeff Swain.
3 touchdowns in the game. Jeff Swain is the blocking tight end. So I just, hi Paul. Just thought I'd get that in there for you. That's what she said.
Oh well, that means Titans is now his favourite team.
But if Ryan Tannehill does go down injured, don't worry, we get to see Deshaun Kaiser.
Brilliant.
Who knew he'd still have a job?
One of the biggest downsides to that defence in Tennessee was the pass rush, and they did bring in Bud Dupree. Again, he's coming off an injury, but if he plays as well as he did for the Steelers in Tennessee, that's a good pass rush.
Even 3/4 of what he was last season, he was an absolute monster.
Not last season. Last season he was
injured for
one-legged.
Well, no, but for the first half he was incredible.
Oh yeah, that's it. I mean, I think they have made some improvements, but it's a toss-up at the top of this division. At the bottom of the division, this is where I think John and I might have some agreement, and we'll see what Jim says. I wanted to put the Jags bottom because I don't like the Urban Meyer appointment, and I want to see Trevor Lawrence do it in the pros, but I haven't got them at the bottom. I've comfortably got the Texans at bottom.
The Texans are picking number 1.
Yeah.
I'm saying that now. It's our predictions podcast next week. I know. Texans are picking number 1. The Jags I've got in a comfortable 3rd place. I've
got them 3 or 4 wins ahead of the Texans, though.
Yeah. Same as.
I've got no Watson, no Hope. Defense is weaker. Their best player is Laramie Tunsil.
I like the summary that John gave it on our spreadsheet here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is no way for me that Deshaun Watson is playing, regardless of whether he's on the team technically or not. He won't play. I like Tyrod Taylor, but with what he's working with, how are you picking up more than 2 or 3 wins for the Texans this year?
Even the dogs, mate.
So my positives were the Bill O'Brien era is over, so they can start to rebuild.
Right.
The season's only 18 weeks long. They do have decent depth at running back. So they've got
Philip Lindsay,
Mark Ingram, David Johnson,
even Rex Burkhead.
Mm-hmm. I mean, quite frankly, they could have a choice of any of them. They're all decent running backs. Get Rex Burkhead out of receiver. I don't care. But, I mean, we discussed it before. Laramie Tunsil does not an offensive line make.
No.
However great an offensive line player he is, individually, as a unit, they're not great. JJ Watt's gone. And the sad thing is, like, JJ Watt was Texas through and through. Like, what he did for Texas after the natural disasters, there's no way he should have been able to leave Texas
he would have stayed
without a fuss.
Yeah.
And he just walked, and everyone went, "Yeah, fair enough, mate."
I think even the fans are like, "Yeah,
even
just
the fan,
go,
yeah,
please."
just go, mate. We don't want you here.
No player has given more to a lost cause than JJ Watt for the Texans, and you can't blame him for walking away. It's sad to say that it's a bit of a wasted stellar career, but it is, because he's probably moved 2 years too late. He's had the injuries. We'll get onto him later, but
and can I also say that Laramie Tunsil is currently inactive because of a COVID outbreak on the offensive line.
Yeah, well, best to get it out of the way now, I suppose. But there just isn't a lot to love about this Texans team. You can look and try and find something, but it's not there for me. I really like David Johnson, but it's fits and spurts. Remember them? They were a rap duo, weren't they?
Came out just after Salt and Pepper.
Yep. And like I say, Philip Lindsay kind of going to get buried, I think, here, and he doesn't deserve that. If he isn't the lead back by the middle of the season, I think they've got a problem.
David Johnson, I think, will be fine. I think you're going to need as many running backs as you can because they're all going to get crushed.
That seems fair.
I mean, in a 53-man squad, I think 12 running backs, you'd be fine.
So beyond the terrible Texans, then, we are saying the Jags are going to have a much improved season.
I mean, they finished 1-15. It's as well. I know they tanked, but it wasn't like the tanking was that obvious for a lot of the season. Like the last couple of games they didn't play Gardner Minshew and played like Mike Glennon.
We get Jake Luton. Yeah, I mean, the only player who came out with any credit last year was James Robinson, and they've drafted another running back.
Yeah, that for me was a strange one. And they're talking about moving James Robinson out wide, which I haven't seen yet. I don't think they did it in pre-season one, but I don't like it. He's your best player. Allow that to integrate with the new best player you've brought in. I'm afraid that I've only made them third because the Texans will just, by process of elimination, be worse.
Yeah.
But I don't see anything to love about this Jags team. I'm glad I haven't got tickets to go to Wembley this year and watch them be terrible, or Tottenham this year and be terrible.
No, it's. I'm intrigued to see what Trevor Lawrence can do with, quite frankly, a bad team. And I think
it's not bad.
It is bad.
It is a bad team.
Their best receiver is Marvin Jones, who I like, but
it's not even their best receiver. DJ Shark is a good receiver.
DJ Shark, actually, he's a good receiver. Laviska Shenault
is a good gadget player.
Really good. I think. I hope Trevor Lawrence can actually make something of Laviska Shenault because I quite liked him last year, but I mean, it's the best. The days of Saxonville are long gone.
Yeah, the best thing the Jags have done recently is they've released Tim Tebow today from this ridiculous tight end position he was trying to play.
That I agree with.
Yeah.
He threw the lamest block in that preseason.
John was showing it to me.
Did you see the block afterwards?
Yeah,
where he just didn't, and then James Robinson just got crushed.
Yeah. Tim Tebow folded, and James Robinson got crushed, and that is why they've got rid of him.
Well, I was saying he throws blocks like a quarterback who's been playing baseball. He is not a tight end.
I agree.
Sold some shirts.
Yeah, they are finishing third because the Titans and the Colts are better teams, and the Texans are a much worse team. I just look at this team on paper, and I don't think it's as bad as what you guys are saying.
I'm not convinced just because you've said so.
I'm not convinced. I'd like to be taught otherwise because I think Trevor Lawrence is that good. I'd love to see him turn this team around.
Every time somebody says a quarterback's going to be this good, they have just as much chance of being Ryan Leaf or Johnny Manziel.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Johnny Manziel threw just as many touchdowns in college as Trevor Lawrence.
Said this before. Johnny Manziel's hype is all down to Mike Evans.
Agreed. I'm just saying, before we christen him the next Peyton or Andrew Luck, can we see him play at least half a season?
It's pretty rare, though, that we do christen someone as a generational talent, like Peyton Manning or Andrew Luck. We have good quarterbacks come out in pretty much most drafts, but no one says, even when they are number one, no one says this is a no lose bet. And Trevor Lawrence is the first one that we've had since Andrew Luck. So yeah, he's a rookie quarterback. He's probably going to throw a ton of interceptions. He's probably not going to have a winning record. It's what he does in years 2, 3, 4 that he has to be counted.
Agreed.
And I mean,
if he outperforms what Justin Herbert managed last year with the Chargers, I'll change my opinion. But he won't. He won't probably do as well as Baker Mayfield did in his first season when he set the rookie completions record or whatever, rookie touchdown record. I don't think it's going to be that easy because I truly believe the rest of the team is that bad. I just don't get it. I don't see what you're getting excited about.
I'm not getting excited about him, but I look at the core pieces. I look at the offensive line. It's good. The offensive line is good. I look at the running back. Yeah, okay. Even if whatever they do with between James Robinson and Travis Etienne, they're two good players. And then they've got Carlos Hyde, who is as good a journeyman as there is at running back. All right, tight end is like, all right, I'll give you that.
What do rookie quarterbacks love? A good tight end
and a good offensive line. The defense though is solid. Like Shaquille Griffin had a good season in Seattle. They should have tried to keep him. Sidney Jones has suffered because he's been injured and at the Eagles, which is a poorly run franchise. He could come good. And then you look at the linebacker.
Out of the frying pan into the fire then.
Yeah, well, you look at the linebackers. Josh Allen, quality linebacker. Miles Jack, quality linebacker. Caleb Von Chason is a really good prospect. And even the defensive line. Malcolm Brown's a good player. And they've got some young players. This team is stacked with young talent. It just needs it's got potential. And if it comes through, this is a good team. Now, I'm not saying every player is going to come through.
No, but I take you back to the Jets and the Bengals where you stack these poorly run teams with good young players and it doesn't work because they're a poorly run franchise and the Jaguars are the epitome of a poorly run franchise.
The Browns were...
It took them 20 years.
Even 4 years ago, we were a team of young talent. Young talent that now look winning. But it takes now the organisation seems to be run well. And I just don't think the Jags are.
This is interesting to me because I think the whole NFL does swirl around as a pool and everybody comes to the top eventually in some degree. The Browns have taken 20 years to get there. The Tampa Bay Bucks have taken a long time to get there. The Bills have taken a long time. So it's happening. The Jags, the Bengals, and the Raiders are probably the next three that you feel it must be their time eventually to come somewhere near the top. It's just that Urban Meyer's going to be shit. So... They don't get my vote this year. John?
Oh, yeah. Turn to the person that you know agrees with you.
Now you can fuck off.
All right. Okay. That's enough AFC South. It's going to be a dumpster fire. We'll take a tiebreaker at the top for Titans and Colts. You said you went for Colts, didn't you, Jim?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. We'll give it to the Colts. Colts, Titans, Jags, and then somewhere way off in the distance, the Texans.
Yeah.
Picking number one.
Picking number one.
And that just leaves the AFC West, where really there is only one winner. I think that's preordained unless catastrophe happened. So tell me why I should be interested in this division.
I think I agree, the Chiefs are going to win it, but I think there's more challenge in them than there has been in the past few years.
Yeah, definitely.
If the Chargers can avoid a second-year slump with Justin Herbert, they could be up there. The other thing I think with the Chargers is they have to keep their star players healthy. If Derwin James comes back, that's a good secondary. It's a good defense. If they don't have an injury at tight end, like they've had Henry Hunter being injured for the last 4 years, that's another weapon for Justin Herbert. If Austin Eckler has a full season, that's a good running back. So I think the Chargers could challenge them. I wrote in the Broncos, they have everything aside from a quarterback.
Yeah, no certainty.
And I wrote on my negatives, it's just quarterback.
Yeah.
Because you look through it, the roster. It's a good roster. The defense is as strong as you get. The receiving core is as strong as you get. The offensive line, which has been pretty bad recently, was good last year, and we'll have a addition of Quinn Mernez.
Mayonnaise.
Mayonnaise.
Good mayonnaise.
He was a third-round pick out of a small school, but he absolutely blew up the Senior Bowl and looks amazing. There's depth there as well. If it wasn't for Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock, I'd be really raving about the Broncos. I just can't get on board with that quarterback situation.
No, I can't, and I don't know which way the Broncos should go. You go the safe route with Teddy, or you go the boom or bust route with Drew Lock. I don't know. I suspect they'll go with Drew Lock because that's the one I think they want to work.
No, I agree.
Same.
But I don't think there is a perfect answer for the problem they've got because they didn't manage to prize Aaron Rodgers away from the Green Bay Packers. Let's concentrate on the Broncos for a minute then. Vic Fangio is a defensive coach and the defense is good. Is he the person who should be in charge of a franchise that needs to upgrade on the offensive side? Or has his time been and gone? He'd never got a head coaching job when he probably should have been a head coach. And I think that maybe he is contributing to holding this team back a little bit. We know Elway doesn't get the quarterback thing right very often. If you then have got a defensive coach who's not able to improve or retool the players that are there, is he part of the problem too?
That's why you have coaching staff. You have the offensive coordinator.
Who's the offensive coordinator?
It's Pat Shermer. Which I think, he was a bad head coach.
A bad head coach, but
he was a good offensive coordinator with the Vikings before that.
Yeah.
Okay.
He got Case Keenum to the championship game.
Okay.
That was a year where the Vikings could feed Stephon Diggs and Phelan. They had players, whereas so it's why I think if you have a defensive head coach and you have a team that is built to crush and destroy, as the Broncos are,
sure.
I think I don't think it's a bad fit. But you just need to have the right people around you. So, hopefully Pat Shermer can. He's done well with an average quarterback. Let's see what he can do with two
average quarterbacks. It's just if you combine the two of them, I think they'd be perfect. But I don't know. There is no consistency with Drew Lock. One week it's 350 yards and 4 touchdowns. The next week it's 4 interceptions before half time. And Teddy, steady Teddy. That's steady what it is.
Yeah.
I just don't see how you make either one of those players a winner in time for this team to be any good.
Like I said, the biggest factor is the cast he's got around him. The wide receivers, the offensive line, even the running backs. Like Melvin Gordon's a good running back. They traded up in the second round to get Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
We'll see what he can do, but he's highly thought of as well. There were rumours that they
Did you mention Royce Freeman?
I didn't.
Big Royce?
Because I've got him as 4th on the depth chart according to ESPN.
But Royce Freeman. Just saying. Still there.
If someone wanted to trade for Royce Freeman in a dynasty league, then I'd be open to offers for Zeke.
47 touches last year for Big Royce. Just saying.
Were you picking him in fantasy this year, Mike?
Yeah.
It was an auto pick.
So a few weeks back, before he signed his contract, there were rumours that the Broncos would be heavy favourites to trade for Aaron Rodgers. If they gave up 2 first-round picks, the 2 future first-round picks to get Aaron Rodgers, and they put him in this team,
they'd be favourites.
They'd be favourites.
They'd be favourites over the Chiefs.
Yeah, I really do think so. So it's can they get enough out of that quarterback play to get them over the hump?
Okay, so circling back to the top of this division and the Chiefs, the only thing that let them down last year was their O-line in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
They got rinsed.
Absolutely destroyed.
That is the word for it, right? So is the O-line better?
Yes, it is. So they traded to bring in Orlando Brown. They picked up Creed Humphrey, who's a veteran centre. Not veteran centre. They picked up Creed Humphrey in the second round. They have picked up other veterans in Joe Tooney, who's quality offensive guard. Even Carl Long has come out of retirement to play for them, and they get Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, who took a year out to help COVID patients because he's a doctor.
Yeah, the doctor. Yeah,
that was a big loss last year and quite underrated. So, all right, they've not changed every single piece of the offensive line, but they have massively upgraded that offensive line.
The line wasn't a problem until they got to the Super Bowl. They had injuries.
Their top
Eric
Fisher and Schwartz as well, the other tackle. So it's a much changed defensive line. They've still got all the other pieces around Patrick Mahomes. You do look beyond Tyreek Hill at wide receiver and go, because it's Byron Pringle is the next best one. But
McCole Hardman, not having him.
He's a returner.
Yeah, he's just another Tyreek Hill.
Don't forget you've got Travis Kelce, who's one of the best receivers in the league.
Yes, that is true.
I see what you're saying, but surely if you're telling me quarterbacks can upgrade players, then this one can upgrade.
That was my next point. I am nitpicking, and Patrick Mahomes is good enough to get the ball to average receivers. So, it's...
I think one that we haven't mentioned is Antonio Callaway. 43 catches, 586 yards and 5 touchdowns for the Browns in 2018 as a rookie.
Yeah, he's got a dodgy, checkered history, shall we say.
Absolutely, but if Andy Reid... if Andy Reid can just get hold of this guy and say, this is your opportunity to be a Super Bowl winner, I really think that he's a talent that's... Josh Gordon and people like that is too far, but he's sliding that way. But actually, the talent is there. He's really good.
He's one of those players that, had it not been for his off-the-field issues, he probably would have been a first-round pick.
Yeah,
like Tyreek Hill. So he's in exactly the right place for it. And if he can sort himself out off the field and he does produce in training camp, then he'll be given a decent chance. And he's, like I say, he's in the best position possible for it.
Here's one of my favourite things I read, because they haven't had much love on this podcast so far, but kickers. Harrison Butker for the Chiefs. 549 points in 61 regular season games, which is the most by any player since stats were started in 1950. Because they score so many points that he's always kicking point afters or short field goals. The guy's been metronomic, and he's surely pushing Justin Tucker now for best kicker in the NFL.
Yeah,
I did a mock draft last weekend, and it was the first time I've seen two kickers go before Justin Tucker.
Who was the other one?
Blankenship from the Colts.
I was thinking that as well. I did a mock draft, and both Butker and Justin Tucker were both there late on in the pick.
I
don't understand that.
Okay, so I still think it's the Chiefs to lose. I do think the Chargers will be closer. I don't think you'll get much of a second-year drop-off from Justin Herbert. I think he just looks too good.
Yep.
It's about keeping the pieces around him. Austin Eckler, for me, is key. I really like what the Chargers are doing. They seem to have taken a big step up from the team that 2 or 3 years ago couldn't close out games.
Let's face it, their biggest problem with the Chargers last year was coaching and time management.
Yeah.
And it's been like that for a few years, where they've lost games they should have won.
They definitely stepped forward, but it's whether they stepped forward enough.
Yeah, so perhaps a new coach was needed. We all said that halfway through last year, and good job that the Chargers followed our advice. Thank you. So we'll see what Brendan Staley could bring, because he can't be much worse, especially with time management.
That for me is the only thing that holds back the progression, is when you have a second-year quarterback who's then put into a new system.
Yeah,
they've just spent all that time dedicated to the previous system, and actually, we should give the previous regime some credit. They did get brilliant results out of Justin Herbert, but it had run its course. So that holds them back slightly, but I think the Chargers are well in for a playoff berth. I really do. I just think they'll be so well up there.
Yeah,
and I'll be delighted for them if they make it, because I think they are a much maligned franchise. And since leaving San Diego, I think their support has dropped right off. And I just think they're one of those franchises I want to see be good. They're a storied franchise. They've been in the league for such a long time that, a bit like we were saying earlier, sometimes you just like to see some teams do well. And I think Justin Herbert and the Chargers I'd like to see do well. Now, that brings me to the Raiders. But before we start slagging the Raiders off, because that's what I'm going to do, I want to say congratulations to our mate Perry, our resident Raiders fan, who's just had his second child today.
Yes.
He's done absolutely no work again, so well done, Deborah. Perry's just out for the glory, as usual. It's a typical Man United fan, actually.
Yeah. Well, no congratulations to them both. I look forward to meeting little John, as I believe that's what the baby will be called.
Odd to name your child after John Gruden.
It is, especially at the moment. John Gruden, for me, it's a hot seat year. I don't see it. Nothing's happening. This team is poor.
Yeah, I wrote, new year, same old dodgy old school coach. Do the Raiders have enough cash to buy out John Gruden's contract? Because
no, probably not.
I think that's probably one of the biggest factors that he could still be there at the end of the year, is that he's on such a long contract, and this is not exactly a franchise that is flush with cash.
I wanna open the Raiders account by saying I think Derek Carr is the most underrated quarterback in the league. He's just been really good. He's never been amazing, but he's been really good for the Raiders on a poorly run franchise for a long time. I don't see that you bring in many other quarterbacks and get a vast improvement out of this team. So credit where that's due. I really like Josh Jacobs. I don't know what more you could want out of a running back, so that's good. I love the fact that Theo Riddick still has a job and is there technically on the payroll. The rest of the team, okay, Henry Ruggs should be a very good player. Be a very good player. Darren Waller, if he produces the same again, he's a top 2 or 3 tight end, which is brilliant for a guy who's had the previous history that he's had. And then
4 years sober yesterday.
Yeah,
really.
That, yeah.
Well, bravo to him. It's worth more than Perry's child, so we should have started with that, really.
Yeah. Congratulations. Sod you, Perry. Congratulations, Darren Waller.
I mean, I'm a huge John Brown fan. I always have loved John Brown as a player, but I don't know if it's still there. And this is what John Gruden seems to do. He takes a like to a player and doesn't look to see if that's really going to improve his team. He just likes that player, you know? And
I just look through the roster and just see average.
Yeah. They missed Richie Incognito last year, which no team should ever confess to, but they did because the O-line was a problem. They've got him back. They've drafted Alex Leatherwood far too high, but
as a player, I think he's a good player, and
he'll be under pressure because of where he was drafted.
Yeah, and I think I said, if they'd switched around those picks, like they picked Trayvon Morig, the safety, in the second round. If they had picked him in the first round and Alex Leatherwood in the second round, we'd be like, yeah, good stuff. So I don't want to take too much away from Alex Leatherwood because I think he will be a good player in the league, but it's a young offensive line apart from Richie Incognito now. Like Colton Miller and Alex Leatherwood at tackle position, I would worry about that just from their experience. I don't think Colton Miller's ever really shown much. They've lost Trent Brown. He's gone back to the Patriots. I think that's a big loss for them. So, it could be another year where Derek Carr is running for his life.
And then with regards to the defense, Cleveland Farrell, never worth what they paid for him.
I think they drafted him fourth overall.
I mean, he's okay. He's league average. Jonathan Hankins, he's on the slide for me. So I don't see that you continue to get great progress out of him. Yannick Ngakoue, fine. Yeah. Good signing.
Good signing.
It feels like it's all on him. Because unless Carl Nassib then takes a step up as well, I just don't see how they're going to get enough pressure on the opposition.
I think you're looking at Carl Nassib, but you're looking at kind of Max Crosby to have another decent season. They brought in Solomon Thomas, who adds a bit more depth to that defensive line. They're lacking so much at linebacker, though. That's a real weak spot for them. And then the cornerback is another dodgy-ish class.
I don't like the defensive backs at all. I mean...
I like their safeties. I think they've actually got 3 good safeties in Jonathan Abram, Carl Joseph, and Trayvon Morig, the rookie.
Trayvon Morig, you can't rate until you've seen him play, and players don't always turn up for the Raiders. It doesn't always work.
This is the problem.
Jonathan Abram is a above average safety, but he's not an outstanding safety, is he?
I wouldn't say he's outstanding, but I think above average is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
That's
what I'm
good.
saying is it doesn't make up for the deficiencies with the rest of the players in that secondary.
No, but I think it's always difficult for a safety to do that.
Yeah.
And there's a reason they're not that highly paid compared to cornerback.
I've never thought Carl Joseph's that good. I don't.
Again, I think it comes down to look. This we can talk about the roster. We can talk about the quality. I think there are some players on there that are good or above average.
It's bits and pieces.
It's bits and pieces. I think the biggest issue is the coaching.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't see that changing because I think they've committed to him and they'll stick with it, but they won't progress. For me, the Raiders comfortably 4th in this division.
Yeah, I've got them 4th. I went Chiefs, Chargers, Broncos, Raiders.
As did I.
But I can see the Broncos, Chargers slipping, depending on how season goes. But yeah, Raiders bottom for me.
And finally on them, will Marcus Mariota be on the roster to start the season, or will somebody come along and pick him up because he's better? I'm getting away with this because Gary's not here. He's better than at least half a dozen of the starting quarterbacks in this league.
Yeah, but who do you go for? If you say your starting quarterback suddenly gets injured.
Yeah, Carson Wentz.
Do you go for Mariota? Do you go for Jimmy Garoppolo, or do you go for Gardner Minshew? Because I think they're probably the three quarterbacks that...
I think you probably go for Gardner Minshew, if I'm perfectly honest. Jimmy G, I don't think the 49ers will let him go, but we're going to get onto that. And that actually leads us very nicely into podcast part 2. So if you'd like to rejoin us for the NFC, we'll be back shortly.